So as already mentioned, I'm a faculty of computer science at IIIT Kottayam. And I have been teaching a course, Artificial Intelligence. And this course was not about AI tools. It was more of about how machines think and also how exactly the process of learning happens in humans. And I have been teaching this course even way before the year 2023. And I knew that the methods worked, the classroom worked, and I knew what was my role in that room. Until things shifted. So I want to start off with a moment of which made me deeply uncomfortable in the year 2023. So usually in the beginning of the session of the semester, I used to tell my students, this AI course is gonna change the way you see the world. But that day, something changed the way I saw myself. So usually I give assignments to students, and one of the students submitted, which was considered to be the most difficult assignment of that particular course, and he submitted that in 11 minutes, which means I uploaded it and he just submitted it in 11 minutes. Not because he was an exceptionally brilliant student, and not because I suddenly became an outstanding teacher, but because you had this GenAI tool which is capable of giving these sort of assignments in limited amount of time, and whatever my course was rewarding. So I was not angry at the student, I was not impressed either, but I felt exposed. So I understood that, see, if a GenAI tool can complete an assignment within 11 minutes, then in the first place, my assignment didn't require any sort of thinking. And I was not worried about the speed in which it was submitted, because we have seen tools, and especially the millennial generation, we have seen the internet, we have seen the Google, how it has revolutionized, and we have a lot of other tools which was coming into picture. But I was just thinking, the current students, we live in a world where information was readily available, information was controllable, and suddenly my classroom was the only place where that control was taken away from them. And we all thought that knowing more was always better. And until this GenAI tool came, then we understood, okay, it knows like even more things than all of us combined together. And obviously I had a feeling, I felt replaceable. And this is usually a strange feeling for a teacher, because usually we say insecurity is not part of our syllabus. And we all live with a script in life. And especially in India, that script is often written by Sharma ji ka beta. Right? You all know him. He doesn't ask why something happens. His whole intention is to make sure that I need to score 100 out of 100 or full marks. So we have been looking at a generation or at a time where knowing more, knowing better, performing more, that is the benchmark. Where like memorize, derive, score, repeat. That was the mantra. It was okay till you had these GenAI tools come into picture, and they know far better than all of us combined. And obviously, if storing information is the benchmark, I'm sorry, we have already lost, because these tools do it far better than what we used to do, right? So obviously, if you think maybe in the 70s or 80s or maybe 90s, whenever you want to watch a show in a TV, what we used to do is we used to sit in front of the TV at 7 p.m. and we used to watch the broadcast or the particular show, whatever the broadcaster decided to show that day. You didn't have any choice. And for the past 3-4 decades, even the classroom was in that way. I was the broadcaster, and you are the audience. You sit in rows, you tune into my frequency, and you basically consume whatever I gave you. But now, we live in the age of OTT platforms, social media, where you are the curator, you are the content creator, and you have the control. Basically, you have the remote control with you. You can decide what I should watch and what I shouldn't. But even though when a student comes to a university and joins, we take him or her way back to the 1980s. We tell them, now you sit back and see the broadcast. So generative AI is the OTT-ification of learning. The transition from a passive audience to active curator, that is the most disruptive change in higher education what GenAI has brought. So obviously, having said that, when first GenAI came into my life, it was not curiosity, it was absolute fear. It was fear of plagiarism, it was fear of shortcuts, and more importantly, it was fear of losing control. So, because for many years I thought that I was a good teacher. I used to plan the lectures properly, I used to structure it very nicely, I used to basically deliver it properly, and I used to conduct exams that were fair, students were happy, parents were also satisfied, administrators were content, and I mistook all that as learning. So suddenly you have a scenario where these things doesn't work anymore. So obviously, just like a normal educator will do, I also try to control that. So which means that I said like, no mobile phones in class, don't use these tools, and I tried it in that way. Not because I was against technology, but it was absolute fear, because I was not knowing what should I do without being the smartest person in the room. And obviously, then I realized that once I started doing it, I lost my most curious students. They stopped asking questions. They used to passively listen to me. And then I realized that I was not trying to protect education. I was trying to protect authority. Now, here's the fact I learned. Generative AI hasn't stopped students from thinking. But we are afraid that generative AI has shown that we've asked students to stop thinking a long time back. Now, so obviously, you have a lot of things happening with respect to GenAI every week as a computer science faculty, and most of you are sitting here are from information technology and allied areas. So obviously, you have a lot of things happening every week. So generative AI didn't introduce cheating into education. Instead, it exposed certain things, or it basically exposed how silly some of our systems work, or you don't need much of thinking. And maybe like we thought like memorizing everything was all right, all these things. So Gen AI basically held up a mirror against our education system. And mirrors are most of the time uncomfortable because they don't argue back, right? And obviously, so why I thought about this was all with respect to the assignment which got submitted in just small amount of time. That made me think like what is going wrong. So I decided whatever that scared me, let me try introducing that in my classroom. So I invited generative AI into my classroom. And I was not sure like how I should manage this, but still I made it in the form of activities where students can use mobile phone, use any of the tool for that particular activity. And suddenly the classroom sounded different. So usually like it is like people will just sit and listen, and now you have a lot of conversation happening. And we all thought that learning always meant silence. But from that day I realized that learning is all about conversations. There were a lot of arguments happening, people trying to maybe have good ideas, half-finished ideas, all these things were happening. And we know that using these tools, definitely there is no limit for creativity, and also you get a lot of answers. You're flooded with answers, right? Now, a particular moment still hangs in my mind, where like it was about a model building, machine learning model, and we were trying to understand the hiring decision of an algorithm. And I asked my students, like, you just try this in a GenAI tool and tell me like what is it saying. And that particular tool was actually a bias tool, but the particular GenAI tool said that no, it is all perfect. And so, but we realized that it had a lot of bias, and it kind of projected historical data as moral truth. And I just asked a question. So maybe if it was prior to 2023, maybe the students would have polished that particular task and would have submitted it for marks. And what I've asked is, I showed the answer and I asked like, if something goes wrong for this particular decision, who is responsible? And there was absolute silence. So that silence had disturbed me far more than plagiarism ever did. So I realized that we are used to getting a lot of answers from GenAI, but most of the time we assume that okay, that's the answer and that's the end of my assignment or end of my task, whatever you're using it. So, as I mentioned, we are flooded with answers everywhere. But what is lacking now is judgment. So, if you ask a question to a GenAI tool, you get the answer back. And what will you do with that answer? That really matters. So, which means that will you be able to ask questions back to this tool, saying like, is it fine this way? Or can I trust you? Or is it going to be true all the time? And those questions definitely matter a lot. And in this GenAI era, ultimately, the role of an educator is not to give answers. Rather, it is more like a facilitator who can train the students to make judgments. So, artificial intelligence did not steal our jobs. It basically stole our excuses. The excuse that memorization was thinking, the excuse was like silence was learning. So we are flooded with answers, and whoever knows how to judge it properly, how to decide, that person will definitely have an edge. Because we always talk about recession happening, or maybe people are losing jobs, but what is the future? So definitely you have a lot of answers, and the value for judgment has increased considerably in the last few years. So one thing is that, can we stop asking AI tools for answers, and can we ask better questions? Questions are very, very relevant. If you, for example, you ask for a particular thing, and can you ask a question like, when will this be dangerously wrong? That will make you think. And you will get a lot of interesting answers as well. And I'm not saying that these tools are all bad, not in that way. But these are excellent tools for increasing the productivity. Think about maybe 10, 15 years, if you want to learn a concept, it would have taken weeks together to understand it, to comprehend it, and to do something on that. But now from an innovation perspective, if you want to do something, these tools will help you a lot to build a prototype and even test it within 1 or 2 days. So, having said that, but that doesn't mean that you can just like that do things. It is always as I mentioned, judgment is more precious than answers. If you have only answers, it is almost like having an accelerator without any direction. You have a lot of things, but you don't know what to do. So judgment is the primary thing. And especially the role of educator. So as I earlier mentioned, I felt I'm getting replaced. But the role of educator is not about replacement or maybe the other way around. But the role of educator is to make sure that you show the way to other people when the script disappears. Thank you.